This podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors. Your San Diego County Toyota dealers. We've got what it takes. Fix Auto. Corky's Pest Control. And Lolita's Family of Restaurants. Hey there, sports fans. Welcome into another week of the San Diego Prep Insider Water Polo Podcast. I'm Christian Pedersen, joined by my co-host, Mr. Tom Atwell. Now, let's get this started with a little bit of a shout-out. You didn't want to bring it up. I want to bring it up. Congratulations to La Jolla on beating Bishops in this pool for the first time. Is that right?
That's correct.
Wow.
First time that we've managed to beat Bishops here at La Jolla High School. We've managed to beat them at their pool a few times. They have dominated this matchup since I've been at La Jolla, but I think this was our 6th or 7th time that we managed to beat them. But the first time at La Jolla High in 15 years this pool has been here, so it was a big deal, really big deal.
So congratulations to the Vikings on a historic moment, and I'm glad that you bring up kind of a change in tradition, because that transitions well into what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the playoff seedings as we see them with just over a week to go in the season. Things are getting a little crowded at the top. Now, you explained to us earlier that there's going to be a new selection process used this season. It's going to be a mixture of the academic with the power rankings and the strength of schedule and all that, but it's also going to have a more holistic approach with a selection committee. So, given what you said with La Jolla beating Bishops to upset that apple cart, we've got Poway currently sitting atop the D1. Let's just break down the D1 Open Division bracket. I know that it's going to be confusing, so bear with us, folks, while we try to talk about this, because this is an imperfect science still with this selection process. But let's look at it right now. As of the CIF academically put together power rankings, it goes Poway, VISTA, Carlsbad, Bishops, Valhalla, Cathedral, La Jolla, Coronado. That's your top 8. Now, if this was football, if this was basketball, if this was any of the other major sports, that would be your open division, cut and dry, right there. Poway plays Coronado, round 1, and so on and so forth. But you're telling me that's not the case this season?
That's not the case. You know what they're going to do is you look at, if you go online right now at CIF website and look at the power rankings, they're going to take the top 12, and out of the top 12, according to the power rankings in Division 1, they're going to take out of the top 12, a committee is going to seed 8 of those teams as the top 8 in the open division, and then the next 4 will be seeded 1 through 4 as the top of Division 1. So when you look at who's going to be in that top 8, I would say 2 through 8, as it stands now, with VISTA, Carlsbad, Bishops, Valhalla, Cathedral, La Jolla, Coronado, that's pretty firm. Those 7 will make the open division, not in that order, but will make the open division. The question is who's going to be the 8th team, VISTA or Valhalla. I think I actually said Valhalla, sorry. VISTA, Poway, or Valhalla are the 2 that are, we're looking at, are they going to stay in open division? One of them is going to be bumped down to D1. And at this point, if I was going to, make my best guess at what might happen, I would say that Poway will stay in the open division and be somewhere in the mix in the top 8, and Valhalla will drop to D1.
So let's ask about this. Poway currently sitting at the number 1 here, but like you're saying from the approach of this committee, not necessarily looking like a runaway number 1. What differentiates it between what we're seeing points-wise and what you're feeling committee-wise?
Well, it all comes down to strength of schedule with Poway, and the fact that they haven't played very many teams outside of the county, and out of the teams that are in the other teams that are in that top 8, they haven't played any of those teams, and so without having any matchups, you can't get a good read on really where they sit. It's going to be hard to put them in the top 5 or so without them having played any of these teams. And if you look at common opponents, every common opponent that they've beaten or lost to, one of those top 5 or 6 teams has beaten that common opponent handily. So Poway's going to struggle making it into the top 5, I think, because of where they sit as far as strength of schedule goes.
Let's talk a little bit about that strength of schedule, because we've talked about it repeatedly from different angles this year. is there are out-of-state or out-of-city schools. There are total number of games played. There are road games versus home games, having your own pool versus having to play at a community pool. There's not the solidified structure like you brought up with football having only 10 games, or certain schools only wanting to play in San Diego County. What I'm kind of thinking is that we've seen this season play out that the teams that challenge themselves out of the city took some pain, and they took in the teeth a little bit at the beginning of the year, and we saw, Cathedral at one point was 12th or 14th in D1. Right. University City was number 2. We had Grossmont up towards the top. LCC. We've had some flipping and twisting around. Does it make it easier or harder for your job to just have this sport where you can look at it and say, oh, well, they challenge themselves just on the academic, or does it make it harder with all of these different variables for different teams?
It definitely makes it a little more difficult because you want to look at the quality of the opponent outside of San Diego when they're playing teams that are from the southern section in Orange County or in LA, or teams up north in Northern California. It's the quality of opponent up there that really matters, not just playing anybody. And then, playing a full schedule, playing at least 25 games, I think makes a big difference in looking at where they should be where they should put themselves. One of the things that we've seen, and this is something the CIF commissioner has really focused on, is the idea that we, at the end of the day, you need to win games. And I believe that's true to a point, that you really do. You have to win games and
just win, baby.
And there's, look at La Jolla's schedule for example. We've lost to Bishops, we've lost to Coronado, we've lost to Cathedral, and some of those games are 1-goal games. We lost to Vista in overtime in a 1-goal game. So, those are all close games. But if we want to put ourselves in the top, at the number 1 spot or the number 2 spot, we got to beat those teams and we got to win those close games. But not playing any of the top 8 teams and winning a bunch of games doesn't really hold enough water to make you, make a statement for you to be in the top 1, 2, even the top 5 spots.
So it incentivizes you to challenge yourself more than just to rack up points.
Right.
Always an interesting thing. Where does the emphasis and incentive fall on winning a league title? Does that really mean anything anymore in this new set of playoff regulations?
It really doesn't. For the Open Division, the top 8 are going to start their quarterfinals at La Jolla, playing at the CIF site, so it doesn't make any difference. In the other divisions, it can matter because your first game is going to be a home game if you win your league, and that's the only reason you really care so much about winning your league, is that you get a home game and you get an automatic bid into the CIF championship because you won your league. But for the Open Division, for all intents and purposes, winning the league doesn't make any difference.
So somewhat of an interesting breakdown there, where historically speaking, if you will, that you have that push for, let's win league, let's get that banner. Open Division kind of says, no, let's put that aside and let's really still focus on that last game of the season. Let's make being the best team in San Diego, not just in City League or in Avocado League, the main focus. Right. Is that good for the sport?
Well, it's good in respects that we really want to branch out. We want to give our kids exposure. We want to get them outside of the county and get them playing in front of coaches, not in San Diego. So it gives them a chance to show their skill set to coaches that might, get them noticed for schools outside of our area if they want to go play at the next level. One of the things that hurts in a way is that each game matters so much, because winning that game can have such a bearing on your power ranking and where you fit in, that if you have 16, 17 kids on your roster that play on your team, only 8 or 10 might play, and you have to win the game. And if you're in a close battle, some of those kids never get in the game. So in a sense, that can hurt because everyone doesn't get to play.
So if you're a team on the borderline here, because this problem doesn't exist necessarily in the D2 or 3 ranks, but if you're an LCC or a Canyon Crest or a Westview, and you're towing that line of, we could put the pedal to the metal and try and take that 8th spot, or we can get everybody in. That's a very interesting dilemma to have.
Right.
But ultimately, you'd like to think that the cream rises to the top and that you still have an opportunity to get the best players in because your whole lineup could contribute. That would be every coach's dream scenario. But I understand what you're saying. How does that play a factor in fatigue? Because you see, like you guys have had with La Jolla, you've had back-to-back big games before. You know, Bishops has had back-to-back, Cathedral's had back-to-back. All the top schools have played back-to-back. You've got another week to go. But then on top of that, you have to come in and still play potentially 5 games to get through Open Division. If you've been going pedal to the metal, are legs getting tired? Or are you thinking, hey man, what I wouldn't have given to just give my kids that extra 2 days off and get some backups in? How do you break that down?
Well, it's interesting. The thing about water polo, because there's no contact with the ground, it's not as jarring as if you played soccer or football. Some of the sports where you're making so much contact, running up and down and jarring on your joints. So the actual, you know, your recovery time after a water polo game is pretty quick. And in fact, sitting sometimes, not playing, we had a week off, but we didn't play for a week, and I think it hurt us more than helped us by having that week off. But the one thing that does happen is because we play so many games, and you do have those back-to-back games, if you do have a kid that has an injury, especially if you have someone, say, that has a concussion and you're following concussion protocol, you could play 6 or 7 very significant games in the time that kid's forced to sit out. So there are drawbacks in having all those games piled on.
All right. So it becomes more of a, the fatigue is just mental more than anything else. Of just, hey, we got a big game today against Cathedral, but we also got a bigger game against Bishops tomorrow. We got to stay mentally sharp for 48 straight hours. So Open Division, it sounds like you got 6 or 7 teams in the mind that are concretely in, with 2 or 3 that are still in the mix. Let's talk about those 2 or 3 that are in the mix, because they'll probably end up as top teams in Division 1. And that would be somewhere in the midst of Poway, Grossmont, LCC, or not, I'm sorry, not Poway, Torrey Pines, Grossmont, LCC, Westview, Halla, Poway, somewhere in that range, we're going to have our top Division 1 teams. Who do you like if you had to say 1 or 2 of those teams are just a lock to be like, let's watch these guys be the odds-on favorite for D1?
I'd say at this point, if Poway stays in Open Division, I'm gonna have Valhalla, I think, as the #1 seed in D1. Okay. And then the 2-3 matchup, the next team fighting to get in that 2-3 spot, I think it's wide open between Grossmont, Westview, LCC, and actually Canyon Crest. Could conceivably at the end of the season make a jump and be in the mix in that group of 4 teams fighting for those 3 spots to be in the top 4. What you don't want is to be the 4th seed. You'd like to be that 2-3 seed and avoid having to play the #1 team until the end. Although I think all those teams are very evenly matched. It's a lot like the Open Division. I think the top 4 in D1 are going to be very evenly matched, and it's going to be hard to differentiate which one's actually that much better than the others.
It'll be a lot of fun to see. We've seen Torrey Pines and Grossmont have played each other. We've got a preview of what that might look like. Grossmont and Valhalla have played each other. We've had a preview of what that might look like. Canyon Crest and LCC and Westview have all played each other. So a lot of matchups that we already know would be fun, that now with that extra added, it's playoffs, makes it even more fun. It's fun to see though that, like, we've talked about 12 or 13 teams, and we've still got Scripps Ranch, University City down on that list. Like, this is going to just be a great group of the top 16 teams really here to pluck out 2 playoff brackets and have a lot of fun water polo being played here. Do you think that, given it's been a couple years now that the Open Division has been a thing? Yes or no on the Open Division?
I think the Open Division is a great idea. I think it gives the teams a lot of incentive. We felt kind of snake bitten that we didn't make the Open Division last year, and it gave our guys a lot of incentive this year to put ourselves in a spot that we want to for sure make that Open Division and give ourselves a chance to vie for that Open Division championship. So I think it provides a carrot out there for teams to really push and want to excel. And what it's done is, I think, also has created a lot of parity. That you have there's so much parity in that open division between the top 8 teams. All of them have split games or barely beaten one another. It's really pretty much a flat, even run between all 8 teams. And then you look at the top 4 in Division 1, it's the same thing. So I think you're right, in the top 16, so much parity that it's going to make a real exciting playoff.
It's amazing to see all this parity, because I feel like the way that it used to be was that just unfortunately some teams just didn't have the talent to hang with the best of the best, and they'd kind of run into a little bit of a bandsaw. You mentioned your team last season having a little bit of a learning experience, a chip on their shoulder, if you will. At the same time, you guys got out of it with the CIF championship. So it seems like overall this open division really benefits everybody, because it gave you guys a chance to say, hey, look, we're still hungry for that next level, and we want to be recognized as the best team in the entire county. But at the same time, we got a banner we can raise. We've got something to play for. We're representing our home pool here. So overall, open division, a great thing. Those are the big dogs. Those are the ones that you absolutely got to catch. Division 1, we've talked about them a little bit. Some great stuff there. Let's move down now into Division 2. For Division 2 and Division 3, there is no committee, there is no selection panel. It's just straight academically done, taking the top teams, seeding them off in an orderly bracket. Right now, the way that we're looking at Division 2, Valley Center has now jumped into the first spot, then Point Loma, then Del Norte, Santana, Claremont, Ramona, RB, San Pasqual, and so on and so forth. What do you see here?
Well, I really think that if I were gonna make a prediction now, I'd say I put Point Loma at the top, and whether they get the 1 seed or not to open up playoffs, I see them making a run to the championship game. Then that next group, I think Valley Center and Del Norte, I think it's a great battle there between those two of who might be the other team to make it to that championship game. What will be interesting is if Point Loma doesn't get the number 1 seed, they're going to face one of those two in a semifinal game that will be a really, really great matchup. I think as we move down the list, I think those other teams are going to struggle to match up with one of those top 3 teams at this point. I give the advantage overall, I think, to Point Loma.
So the Pointers, coming off of last year's Division 3 championship, keep building. And it's a relatively young contingent. I want to talk Kai Ball, their powerful young scorer. He's only a sophomore this season. We've seen a lot of success from him. It's interesting when you have a setup like this, where you're really just talking very exclusively about that upper echelon, those top 2, maybe 3 teams, saying, hey, we really want this as the final, and that the rest are going to struggle, because at the same time, you can get teams that look past a game, and they're like, hey, we're ready for the finals, we're cruising for the finals, then boom, a weird quarterfinal matchup comes, you get an exclusion, you get a weird bounce, the sun reflects off the pool or something like that, and you get a Rancho Bernardo upsetting somebody.
And I totally see that with this group and Division 3, which is one of the great things about this new format of having an open division and then Division 1, 2, and 3, because teams that don't either have the luxury of having their own pool on campus, maybe don't have quite as many kids in the program, they're struggling in one way or another, and perennially have been struggling in one way or another. This gives them a chance to vie for a championship, in a Division 2 or Division 3, which creates some excitement and some interest around the sport, and then you can see their sport grow at the school. It creates some interest, and down the line, I think that for overall growth of the sport, it's going to help the sport.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see, because, like you said, the way that the systems work is that you can be moved up or down depending on how you finish the season to find you a level of play that best suits your team's capabilities, so that you have something set up so that you're not just continuously down at the bottom of Division 1, not garnering any interest or any support. Point Loma very easily could go from D3 to D1 in the span of 2 years, though, which would be a very interesting meteoric rise for that school. So congratulations to Point Loma and all their success. Let's move into Division 3. This one has looked pretty locked now for the past 4 weeks, if not all season, because it it goes Helix, San Diego Academy, Olympian, Escondido, RBV, Mission Bay, Classical, and then Monte Vista. But really the two teams to know here are Helix and San Diego Academy. They've been kind of locked, dead set, 1 and 2 all season long. This is Way North County versus Way East County. I like on principle that matchup. I like seeing that this is not a continuation of, you know, we're hugging the small coastal schools, or, oh, Division III is just for South Bay, or this or that or the other. What do you like out of it?
Well, I do think that, you know, Helix is kind of a lock at that top spot, and they look poised to maybe make a run all the way to the championship. But I agree that, you know, with San Diego is right on their heels. But the thing is, as you go down, you know, teams like RBV or Mission Bay, you know, you look at RBV's schedule and they're 10 and 9. They played a lot of games, and I think that will bode well for them as they move into the postseason. That maybe they'll have a little more experience, and some of the other teams can come in with the ability to put a game plan together that can make it competitive against one of the teams and find themselves in the top 4, you know, in the semis or in the championship game.
RBV is an interesting case study here because while we're talking about the divisions trying to bring parity to it all, there is still league play, which puts teams like RBV into situations where they really get tested. They really go and play a step or two above what you would say, oh, they can't hang with an LCC or with this or with that. But that has a trickle-down effect,
right,
where it ultimately rubs off on you a little bit, and you sort of say, hey, look, yes, we lost badly to that team, but what it did for us was got us really ready to compete against schools of our own caliber, because we're out there actually testing ourselves versus just rolling over saying, oh, whatever, we lost that one, move on to the next one, we can't wait to play, you know, Oceanside or something like that.
Exactly.
So an interesting couple of matchups to look for there. You know, a lot of interesting matchups to look for across the board. Playoffs are just over a week away from starting. They will be happening here in La Jolla at the Cognate Pool. All 3 divisions, or all 4 divisions?
All 4 divisions.
All 4 divisions. So you know right where to catch it. That's where you can catch us for the rest of this season. Any final notes as we take off?
No, you know, I think it'll be interesting to see how this next week plays out. I know everyone has at least one significant game. You know, La Jolla next week matches up 3 in a row: Cathedral, then Carlsbad, then Vista.
Oh.
All in a row, so there's a lot of games to be played still before the end of the season even happens. So I think we're going to see some juggling in that power rankings, but it's going to be fun.
There you go. Quick note, when is the selection going to be released?
The selection is going to be released on Saturday, late Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. So 2 weeks from this Saturday. A week from this Saturday.
A week from this Saturday, 11 o'clock, you'll be able to find out just exactly who has what road to their titles, because the moment those are released, everyone's thinking, that's how we're going to get it. That's how we're going to win. Every team has a shot at it. And until then, folks, we will see you at a game.